Welcome to Monday, October 18th, 2021. We've got a small but rather feisty little storm that's going to impact some of you tonight and into the day on Tuesday, mainly across portions of Wyoming, portions of South Dakota and Nebraska and Utah and Idaho, and far northwest Colorado. It's not nearly the intensity of last week's storm, but it's a moist system. It'll be nice again today ahead of the storm. Wow, wasn't this past weekend just spectacular? We're going to have most areas with a nice day again today. But rain and snow will be moving in tonight and tomorrow. We'll show you where. And then fair weather returns mid to late week and into the start of the weekend. So we've got one system this week. The rest of the week looks pretty good. Now, the end of October still looks to be busy. We've got some model disagreements, and we'll show you those. But we're pretty confident, as we have been over the last week or so, to tell you that the end of October, early November is going to see more in the way of winter weather and colder weather come in, and we're so confident about that. It's just going to be figuring out the details and the timing. We'll give you a sea surface temperature update out in the Pacific Ocean. It's getting interesting, and we'll talk about that and its ramifications down the road. Here we are with today's upper level chart. This is 500 millibars or 18,000 feet, showing you the structure of the jet stream and the troughs and the ridges across North America. You see how it's getting really wavy? Lots of waves. When you get a higher number of waves in the northern hemisphere, the more busy the weather's going to be, more changeable. Here's that upper level low right near Lake Tahoe right now. Some snow falling in the high Sierra of California right now, and even some showers in some of the Central Valley areas of California. This system is going to head eastward while this system stays up in the Gulf of Alaska. And you can see this. It kind of breaks off from the main jet stream. And then we've got the low center just about over Steamboat Springs by noon tomorrow. Now, if you were to compare the structure and the size of this low to the system that we had last week, it's much smaller. I mean, it's a fraction of the size of last week's storm. But the source region of this system is back out here, and it did pick up a fair amount of moisture. So there's good moisture with this system. So it doesn't look terribly impressive. It also is not pulling in any really cold air compared to the last system. So what we're going to see is a borderline rain-snow situation in some parts of the region with this system. The heavier moisture, as is always the case, is always going to be along and north and northwest of the low, and that's where the heavier moisture will be as the system moves quickly off to the east as it goes on by. So this is today, and by this time tomorrow, it's going to be there. And if you were to zoom in, you could see the center of the low is right there. This means there's going to be an east-west axis of heavier moisture falling right in here, very similar to the areas that saw the most significant moisture with last week's storm. So yes, this will be a bit of a nuisance, but boy, these areas here, which really in the heart of the drought, are going to get another shot in the arm. So there's good news with this system, and here it is. You can see that east-west axis of nice rain and snow coming in with this system. I mean, we're talking about the potential in many areas to get over an inch of water from the eastern slopes of the Wind River Mountains through the Casper area, through the northern part of the Laramie Range, then right along the Pine Ridge. So it's not a big area, but this area is going to get two major weather events in 2 weeks. The good news about this system is that it's going to be a lot of rain at first before it makes the changeover. And then you can see through the next 90 hours, more rain and more precipitation for the Pacific Northwest and into central and northern California and the Sierras. Really nice seeing the Sierras getting into the act, and we think that's going to continue, and we'll show you that here in a moment. Northwest Colorado, southwestern Wyoming, northeastern Utah will not be as wet, but some rain and snow coming to those areas as well. So hunters, this is a snow level that's going to be higher than last time, but do be ready, hunters and folks traveling over the mountain passes, from late tonight through Tuesday night for some snow up into the high country. And there it is. Again, not widespread snow, but you can see where the heavier band of moisture we showed you, when the rain changes the snow, it'll be a heavy, wet, spring-like snow and not driven by a lot of wind. There will be some wind on the backside of this storm. We do expect the Colorado Front Range, southeastern Wyoming, to have some windy conditions tomorrow. When you're on the south end of the low, you're going to get the wind. That's why you're going to get down-sloping winds or winds that go downhill. That dries out the air and warms it up and makes it windy. As we go forward, this is for the weekend. For the weekend, the jet stream takes a more west-to-east flow. We have this area of high pressure through central Canada, low pressure in the upper Great Lakes here. So the general flow, if you were to follow those little arrows with those wind barbs we call them, it's basically a Pacific flow for the weekend. So it's going to be mild. Another decent weekend coming on up after the storm moves on out. Now, I want to show you what's going to happen in the long term, and I want to show you the model disagreement. All the models agree that the middle to the end of next week is going to be getting more active and colder. The European model shows a strong storm over south central Canada and a pretty good cold front and strong jet stream winds coming in behind it, driving in some cold air right around the 27th, 28th of October. The Canadian model delays it a day and brings it in further west. The GFS, or the American model, is more similar to the European model. So there's some disagreements on timing between the model suites, and you expect that. There's going to be some times when the computer modeling, as you change seasons, has difficulty, and that just goes with the territory. But we are getting confident that the last days of October into early November, we're going to be colder and more stormy. And you can really see that if you were to look out even further. This is for Halloween Sunday, the 31st. The GFS, or the American model, and to some extent the European model, is showing a pretty potent storm system around Halloween. Now, take this with a grain of salt. We put a question mark on this here, but I just want to show you the tendency for something to come through at the end of October into early November is there. We can't tell you the timing or the details yet, but we're seeing it in the data like we saw last week. If you were to look at the next 2 weeks of precipitation, it could be quite productive. And what really want to focus on here is the West Coast. California, parts of the Pacific Northwest could really be in store for some good moisture, and some heavy October Sierra snows may be coming at the end of the month into early November, and even into Southern California getting some rain. We're going to have a really strong jet stream developing, and that's typical in a La Nina situation in the early fall season. So we're fairly confident something similar to this for the West Coast in California, and even into the interior parts of the Pacific Northwest, could be getting into the action as well. And then look at the Rockies, look at the Central Rockies. So we'll need to keep an eye on the end of the month. Here's your sea surface temperature update. La Nina is getting steam again. It's beginning to get stronger. You see all the green here? You're starting to look at the sea surface temperature anomalies, again, getting colder, which is something that is expected. We've been talking about it. We expected La Nina to intensify again before weakening and disappearing by spring, and that again is the case. I think the long-range trends are really coming together. We also have this cold pool, sea surface temperature anomalies getting colder and colder in the Gulf of Alaska, while this warm pool is sandwiched in between it. But I can tell you, boy, the Pacific, folks, compared to 2 years ago in 2019, these areas here really showing significant cooling. Now, one thing you have not heard about this season, this hurricane season, is hurricane activity in the Pacific, especially the Western Pacific. It has almost been non-existent. Not exactly non-existent, but darn close. We're actually looking at very little tropical activity right now, and October can be a busy hurricane month in both the Atlantic and the Pacific, but it's just not happening. And I think we're seeing some of the sea surface interactions probably impacting that. We'll keep you updated on these sea surface temperatures throughout the course of the fall and into early winter. As we mentioned in a podcast last week, we have seen before these warm pools come up into the Gulf of Alaska during the winter and see a flip from these colder waters to these warmer waters, which is a cold signal for winter. So we're keeping an eye on that. But the cooling in the Pacific here over the last couple of weeks has really been impressive. Have yourself a very good Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day.